That music and those fancy graphics can only mean one thing: voting. It's underway right now in most states of the union. One crucial battleground state, though, we have already been watching, the state of Florida, where we find our Mark Strassmann. He's in Doral, which is in Miami-Dade County. And certainly, Mark, it's a county that many eyes are on today, throughout the day. What's your sense of what you're seeing so far?
Well, you know, Josh, you can talk to individual voters outside polling precincts like this one. This is Fire Station 69 in Doral, and you really only get a sense of what is happening in a couple of families. But let me give you what could be a barometer of what's happening statewide. There are about 9 million Floridians expected to vote today. 2/3 of them, 6.5 million people, voted early. Of that 6.5 million, 2.6 million were Democrats, 2.5 million were Republicans. The rest were unaffiliated. So what you can take away from that is Democrats, Hillary Clinton probably starts the day with a bit of an advantage. The question at this point is, will the Trump folks show up in enough numbers? Will they be motivated enough to show up to make up that gap and then some? And that's the key question here, because as we've heard repeatedly from what all the experts who study these numbers in somewhat nerd-like fashion have said, without Florida, Trump can't win the White House either. He just can't do it. So this is a very important state, and I think you're going to get a sense fairly early from particular Florida counties, depending who's ahead, how the rest of the state's going to go, and for Trump, how this election could go.
Mark, talk to us a little bit, if you could, about the Hispanic vote in Florida. We tend to speak of it in monolithic terms, but of course, the Cuban community is very different than the Puerto Rican community and may vote differently.
You are absolutely right, Alex. First of all, there are about 1.7 or 1.8 million Hispanics in Florida. Cuban Americans, particularly older Cuban Americans, most of whom live here in Miami-Dade, have always tended to vote conservative Republican. They've been a group of folks that Republican candidates have counted on. But of late, two things have changed. One, far more non-Cubans have become part of this process, non-Cuban Hispanics. Puerto Ricans in particular have moved here in large numbers. They're now the second largest Hispanic group in the state of Florida. They tend to vote more Democratic. The other thing is that Cuban Americans have been warming to Democratic candidates. 4 years ago, Barack Obama won 49% of the Cuban American vote, 49%. So it's not as though a Republican candidate can come in here the way he could have 20 years ago and assume that he's going to win 60–70% of the Cuban vote. That just doesn't happen anymore.
Mark Strassmann there in Florida. Again, it also bears mentioning Puerto Rican voters tend to turn out in much higher percentages than do those U.S. mainland. So something else to keep an eye on. Mark Strassmann there again in Doral, Florida. We very much appreciate the time. I'm sure we'll be back with you throughout the day.